Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will. I'm Jim. Yeah, mugging it up as usual.
Well, it's a little chilly here, so the cup is full of hot chocolate.
All right, good stuff. Put anything else in there with it?
I had a little bit of whipped cream on the top, but it's already melted.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I don't want that Midwest answer. Come on now.
Oh, don't you know? We hear Sven and all this. No, I did not put any alcohol in it.
Hope you sleep better at night. So they say.
Depends. Can't guarantee you're going to wake up the next morning feeling the right way.
Sometimes you even wake up in the trunk of a car. So, story
if
for
you know, you
time.
know.
That's right. If you know, you know. Winter sports are in full swing. And speaking of which, we've got a look at the D1 baseball preseason top 25. Number 10, NC State. Number 11, Florida State. And number 13, Notre Dame. Those aren't the only teams. The guys at D1 baseball had some great things to say about the Pac-9 on their podcast. You should check that out. We've got the top 5 plus the full slate of ACC teams in the poll at ACCNation.net. You want to check that story out and a couple others that we have there. And a reminder for you that Aaron Fitt of D1 Baseball is going to be joining us on February 1st. We'll talk about all kinds of stuff, just baseball. Who am I kidding? It's going to be nonstop baseball.
Well, I was going to say, the way things are going, this might be the only baseball you get for a while.
This is true. This is true. We'll see how this all plays out. Speaking of stories to read up the site, the latest U.S. Fencing Coaches Association Top 30 has 2 number 1 ACC teams, and they're both the same. How is that possible? You'll have to read. Coming up, the latest CSCAA swimming and diving poll is out. Top 25 and tied for second in the men's competition is NC State. And meanwhile, on the women's side, at the top slot, it's Virginia. So in gymnastics, NC State and North Carolina are having an early battle. The Wolfpack are ranked number 25. Tar Heels are at number 26. Other non-conference sports, Notre Dame men's ice hockey ranked 13th in the latest poll. Boston College men are in the RV category. No action for the BC women, who are normally in the poll every year, but not so far this year that I can tell. I haven't seen any action there. Getting into conference action, meanwhile, in tennis, the Virginia men are tied for 7th. North Carolina women are ranked 3rd nationally. And if you haven't listened to the latest episode of ACC Nation, well, we invite you to do that now. Our special guest is Kelly Quinlan of Jackets Online. We had a great conversation about football and basketball in Atlanta. Some interesting stuff going on down there. And you really want to listen to Kelly talk about that, because, man, there's some things that sort of raises my eyebrows just a little bit on the side. Talking to him. Interesting stuff. And a heads up for you Hokies fans, Chris Coleman of Tech Sideline is our special guest on Monday, January 24th. We'll talk about the newest addition to the Head Coaches Club in Blacksburg. And then some thoughts on how Mike Young is doing with basketball. And speaking of basketball, Will, let's talk about some hoops, because that's the main sport that's going on right now. And we can certainly talk a little bit about, let's see, on the women's side, that's where the action is.
I was going to say, get the positive stuff, out in front here.
Yeah. On the women's side, the AP Top 25, the latest, number 3, Louisville, and number 4, NC State. This is some really great action going on there. Also at number 18, it's Georgia Tech. Number 19, Notre Dame. Number 20, UNC, and at number 21, it's Duke. And in the RV category, Virginia Tech is hanging in there. I think Virginia Tech is showing just enough that they're probably going to be, I think they're bracket worthy easily. So now over on the AP Top 25 men's basketball side, this is not a great year for ACC men's baskell. It
stinks.
Yes, it does. Number 6, Duke. And if you're waiting for anything else, don't hold your breath. In the RV category, we've got Miami and UNC. And I don't know if if UNC will actually stay in there or not.
Boy, after that effort, who
Hmm.
can rescind those votes?
Crazy stuff. It was interesting, the conversation. We've had a piece up on the website, and I'll remind you, it's accnation.net. That talks about the latest bracketology, which we're getting into. And the couple of folks over on Reddit, one a Wake Forest fan, and no, I'm sorry, it was a Louisville fan, because I'm turning things around here. Wake Forest was in the baseball. I'll throw that in there maybe a little later. But anyway, on basketball side, it was a Louisville fan and a Virginia fan. And negative vibes, man, negative vibes. And I just wanted to let you guys know that there's always next year. And we haven't even gotten to the ACC tournament yet. And things magically happen around ACC tournament time, Will.
Yeah, and I sympathize obviously, with a Virginia fan, because they have underachieved compared to expectations this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, they came in, I think projected to be fourth in the league, and I think right now they're somewhere coming into Wednesday, somewhere around eighth or ninth, and those questions about the scoring have persisted all season, from game one, and except for a game here or there, they have not really scored consistently well. And as far as Louisville goes, I don't think there's any more of a fitting thing than the game on Wednesday night being delayed due to a leak in the Yum Center roof, which that's I guess just like their offense, it's leaky. Kind of but yeah, very disappointing year. And obviously you're hearing the calls for Chris Mack to be fired, which is that his tenure has been a bit of a disappointment, but it is what it is. I mean, they've had the talent. This year, this team just doesn't feel like they have gelled at all.
Let me ask you something. You talk about Chris Mack and people calling for his head and everything. I just kind of slough a lot of that off. But I mean, is there anything to that, Will? I mean, he's had a rough ride, say the least. So
I mean, they've had some success, not the kind of success you would expect, especially with his first year. It looked like they were going to be, the trajectory was there for them to be, a consistent NCAA tournament team, but they just have not been there. And obviously he got himself in a little bit of trouble this offseason with the whole Dino Gaudio thing, and he gets suspended. That doesn't look good on him. But I don't have the figures in front of me. But what's the buyout? I know he's got a pretty lengthy contract, if I'm not mistaken. But what's the buyout on that thing? I don't know if that's something the school can afford, especially if roofs are leaking.
Yeah. If the roof is leaking, that is not a good sign. I don't see Chris Mack leaving there anytime soon. If you're, somebody that's hoping that he will, I don't see it. I think it would be a mistake to run Mack out of town, to be honest with you. I get the feeling this year is kind of an anomaly year. I mean, every once in a blue moon, you have down seasons, and things have still not settled down because of COVID. There's a lot of other things thrown in it too. It's just all kinds of stupid stuff, unsettling stuff. And I think it takes a while for the dust to settle and people kind of get their feet up underneath them again. That's what I feel like is going on in college basketball this season. The ACC specifically just has looked horrendous. We talked about you specifically brought up the word consistency. There is no consistency. And all you have to do is look at the scoreboard over the last month and see the scores. I've never seen anything like this, where, you have 1 or 2 points, overtime games. It's just like, now there's 1 or 2 things going on here. There's either a horrible lack of consistency, or we're actually getting to a point where there's parity. I tend to think the first is right.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. It and we see in North Carolina is like the perfect example of this. I mean, we saw their previous two games. They beat up on Virginia and Georgia Tech. Granted, they're mid pack or lower in the league,
Right.
but what happened to them on Tuesday night against Miami? They had it done to them.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. It really is. It's just crazy. I find no rhyme or reason. And I think it's very frustrating. Obviously, it's frustrating for the coaches. It's just as frustrating for some of the players based upon comments and actions that have gone on. Usually these kinks are worked out earlier in the season. So I think maybe it's been a kinky season, folks, but not in the way you wanted.
Yeah, we're not not that kind of kinky.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
yeah. Hey, the title of the bracketology story is perfect for that. Pain, no pleasure. All right, let's talk about bracketology here. Let's talk about right now. Joe Lunardi just came out with his most recent college basketball bracket. Um, he's got his 4 number 1 seeds, and in the Midwest, it's Auburn. Okay, that may change again. If Auburn doesn't, again, this is a consistency factor. No slam on Auburn, but I mean, you have to be consistent to stay at that number 1 slot. Midwest, number 1, Auburn. The West, it's Gonzaga. And the East, it's Arizona. And in the South, it's Baylor. Now, let's talk about the teams from the ACC that have been selected in Lunardi's bracket. And then look at the teams that are in that first round, and let's get your thoughts on this. Will, our first team is in the Midwest. Number 10 seed is Miami. Okay, and that's going to be in Fort Worth. So Miami, Seton Hall. Number 2 seed Kansas, and Princeton. Obviously, number 2 Kansas is going to be huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
well, we should keep in mind too that this was posted on Tuesday morning before Miami laid a keg of whoop ass on North Carolina. So that'd probably be a seed line bump up right there.
It wasn't just a can; it was a
A keg.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe.
But Seton Hall is a team that has had its moments. I mean, they've had some decent point through the season, but I think they've been kind of like going downhill a little bit of late. Yeah, they've lost their last 2 games. They lost to DePaul, if that gives you any indication where things stand up, and then they just lost by 1 at Marquette. I mean, they did beat Texas, but Texas is not as good this year as they have been in years past. Even they were a preseason top 5 team, but that team has just not gelled whatsoever. They beat Michigan, but again, Michigan's one of the most disappointing teams in the country. They've fallen completely off the map, and just like Texas. UConn at home, overtime win. That's a nice win. That's they're probably their biggest win of substance right now, as far as I'm concerned. But depending on the day, I probably would take Miami to win that.
Really?
To be honest, yeah. I feel it is like, I think the thing is, as long as Miami's healthy, they can stay up there and win the league.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's encouraging. At least we have one so far that
well, that there might be a little bit of recency bias built into that.
Sure. Maybe.
Because what happened the last time we saw Miami?
Yeah. Well, we've got plenty of podcasts to go, so we'll stick with the recency bias. It's okay. In the West, number 11 seed is Wake Forest. They're also going to be paired up with Alabama, number 3 Illinois, and Wagner. They'll be playing in Indianapolis.
Yeah, they're a strange team. I mean, they beat Gonzaga, they've beat Houston,
Mhm.
They've beat Tennessee. They lost to Missouri, ranked 139th on KenPom. Lost to Iona as well. I mean, no shame in losing to Rick Pitino, but this is the team that relies on the 3-pointer a lot. Um, I don't know what their I think a little under 50% of their shots are 3-pointers, and they're they're 246 in the country in those shots. So it seems like if this is a classic case of if the threes aren't falling, then you can beat them. I don't know if Wake could win that game. I think they would have a bit of an inside presence. I'd love to see Alondas Williams go up against this Alabama defense, but I think they would probably. I don't know if I would take Wake to win that game, but the fact that they're in the bracketology, given they were projected to finish maybe next to last in the league this year, probably that it's a huge success for this team.
Not bad at all. Yeah, I would say that Alabama is another one of those recency issues that they've kind of been dipping lately, and there's some struggles going on there, and I'm not sure what that's about. There is a level of inconsistency there. I would be concerned with number 3, Illinois.
Yeah, if they were, if they can, depending like what their thing is if you have a big man that can match up with Kofi Coburn, then you stand a chance. If you don't, then they're probably going to win.
Right. Now in the East, we've got number 2 Duke, number 2 seed Duke. This is going to be played in Greenville. The highest ranked team that they potentially could face in this one is number 7 Iowa. Then there's St. Mary's and there's Navy. Now, I don't want to say cakewalk because, there is a lack of consistency from time to time coming out of Duke as well. So, somebody could reach up and smack them just as easily as anybody else. But this looks like one of the more surefire first rounds that they can get through of any of the ACC teams.
Well, yeah, 15-2, but then again, we have seen Navy beat an ACC school earlier this season.
Sure.
I mean, different situation, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I would love to see a matchup between them and Iowa, though. Like Iowa's one of the best offensive teams in the country. They're like top 30 and 2-point percentage. They're about 35% from 3. They're just a really good offensive team, and we've seen that like throughout the season. They can be beat because they're, I would say, okay on defense. I mean, they gave up 74 points to Virginia, if that gives you any indication. So if Duke were to face Iowa in the second round, I would take the over 100%.
Interesting. Then in the South, we've got number 7 seed North Carolina. This is also going to be played in Indianapolis. This does not look good. Marquette, number 2 seed Purdue, and Liberty.
Yeah, not a good one. I would say. Yeah, I mean they would. I think they could be Marquette. Marquette's an okay team, but first year for Shaka Smart there. Don't think they're like super duper talented team, but I mean I think depending on the matchup, I think they could give Carolina a game, but I think they could beat Marquette. Now, asking them to beat Purdue again, that would be hard. I mean, granted, they gave Purdue a game on a neutral back in November, only lost by 9, but Purdue, I think, is playing a lot better now than they were back then. I think they could win that game.
Yeah. I don't think there would be an issue with Liberty.
No.
But yeah, I would worry more about Marquette just because of Shaka Smart.
Shaka Smart, Shaka Smart, Shaka Smart.
Thank you, Rufus and Chaka Khan. I just think that he is a really strategic type of coach who can find your weakness and really use it against you. So that might be a challenge. I don't think they have the talent on the bench to face it head to head. Marquette, North Carolina. North Carolina is definitely more talented, but at the same time, uh, I'm just thinking, man, I have seen him do some things with VCU way back when that I just was like, how did you do that? How did you pull that rabbit out of the hat? So
Yeah, well, we saw what he did at the VCU. So
yeah,
we know he can do it.
so that's the type of guy that you want to that's an X factor that a lot of people forget about. A lot of people talk about Buzz Williams. He is an X factor that you have to be concerned about as a coach. Krzyzewski is an X factor. There's several other coaches that are the same way. They will pick apart in their mind uh, the opponent, find the weakness, and then attack that in some way, tear it down, and you can just see the dominoes falling on the opponent, the opposing team. So
Mhm.
that's an X factor for me, and I just think sometimes we tend to overlook that. We tend to think that, oh well, it's all set in stone. The coaches are all, this is the way it's going to be. This is what I taught you. When we had practices, and we're going to stick to that. Uh, Now these guys, some of these guys are they're they're truly playing that 3D chess in their head, and so you have to watch for them. They'll sneak right up on you in a heartbeat. Um, anyway, that's Lunardi's bracketology, and we're going to look at in some of the coming uh, episodes. We're going to look at Charlie Cream's look at women's basketball. He had one that came out. It's going on pretty close to almost a week ago. I didn't want to get into that today, mainly because I felt like it had aged out just enough. Lunardi's is like now, and
Mhm.
so there are some changes that are going on in women's basketball that we need to keep a close eye on, and it's going to impact the brackets. And it's never too early, especially when we're talking about, it's almost the 20th of January, so we're just a little bit away from hitting February, and February is going to go quick. So it's time to start really looking at bracketology, and this is part of the reason why we brought up the baseball. While baseball is on the website, and why we're going to be having Aaron Fitt on the program to talk about not only college ball but ACC ball pretty soon, because literally it's a month away, the start of the season. It starts right around this time next month, and so that's going to go very quick. It always does. Spring, I swear, winter sports just disappear on you, and the next thing you know, you're in the middle of baseball season. So
But here in Minnesota, it's still winter.
that's right, and it will remain so until about July 1st,
Maybe.
maybe. Well, hey, snow's all good, but I'll stick with the it comes down one day and it's all gone the next, so it's all good for me. So anyway, in the grand scheme of sports, what do you see that's maybe a big story that you're thinking about? And let's talk about not only the ACC but just sports in general,
Yeah.
because you kind of alluded to baseball here just a little while ago, and I think that was the bigger picture. So
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously in baseball, we have no idea what the future holds for MLB, because we don't know if there's where things stand. They've been locked out for a couple of months, and there's hardly been any talks. And maybe that spring training's approaching. We should, maybe they'll start talking more. But I did want to touch on ACC football a little bit before we go. Just talk about like some of the the players coming back, and seeing just all the change going on, especially in the Coastal. I mean, we're looking at Pitt. They losing Kenny Pickett, but they get Keaton Slovis from USC. I think Pitt could very well be the Coastal favorite. As of recording, we still don't know who the offensive coordinator at Miami is going to be. They offered the current head coach at Toledo, and he turned it down. And I think there is, some buzz about Cristobal has been known to be kind of a difficult guy to work for because he has so much of his coordinators that they get burnt out on him. And that's a situation to watch. Like I said, we still don't know who his head coaches. I really like the coordinators Duke is bringing in with Mike Elko.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be set up for success. It will take a couple of years, but I do believe they're going to get there, to a level similar to where they were, maybe a decade ago, where they're competing for bowls. The Virginia schools could have rough first years just because of attrition. You're looking long term. I know Virginia's got Brennan Armstrong back, Keaton Thompson back. They'll have Lavelle Davis back, Dontavian Wicks back. Their offenses, on the skill positions are going to be absolutely loaded. But I think all 5 starters in the offensive line are gone. That might be a bit of a problem. They did lose Johnny Woods. He's in the draft, but obviously that defense was so bad that we were just that. There's a lot to work on, and one of its best players, Wes Weeks, is now at LSU. So, and obviously a lot of players from Virginia Tech mostly have gone pro. They've lost some to transfer, but a lot of them have decided to enter the draft. What else am I know? Georgia Tech. Obviously, we talked with Kelly the other day. I invite you to go back and listen to that podcast and check it out on YouTube, ACC Nation on YouTube, because you get to see a lot of facial hair between Kelly and I, and Jim to some extent. But yeah, I mean, the Atlantic, it looks, NC State's bringing a lot back. I'm a believer at NC State. Clemson, huge question marks just because of all the coaching turnover. What can DJ Uiagalelei do to improve on what was, to be frank, a rough year? Yeah. Wake Forest, can they keep it up? They obviously get Sam Hartman back for another year, but Christian Beal Smith is in the transfer portal. They should have Donovan Green back. So they're going to have some good players on offense back. Florida State, this is going to be a big year for them. They got a nice recruiting class. Louisville's got, obviously Satterfield on the hot seat. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting year coming up in ACC football, and there's still a lot to figure out between now and then.
We're going to be looking at the NFL mock drafts here before too long, and I know it seems early. We're talking about the NFL draft is in April. However, this is always a good time to start looking at stuff. And I've seen a lot. I've seen 4 deep so far, and it's some very interesting stuff. You brought up somebody just a moment ago in Kenny Pickett. Pete Thamel has moved from one job over to ESPN, where he is the national college writer for football. And he came out and said that he believes that Kenny Pickett is QB number 1 in the NFL draft. What do you think about that?
I think he is deserving of that. I'm just trying to think. I think my favorite quarterback in this draft is Matt Corral at Ole Miss. There's just something about him that I just really like, and it's hard for me to explain. I think maybe it's just because he was coached under Lane Kiffin, and I thought he just did a really good job of coaching him up. I like his tool set, just what he can bring. He is a dual threat guy. He's probably a better passer than he is a runner, but he can run. But I do like Kenny Pickett, but I just don't know if any of these guys are really like franchise quarterbacks. I just don't know if they're quite that good.
Interesting. A lot of that specific point has been brought up time and time again, in regard to this year's crop of people who are out for the draft, whether or not they're of a higher quality. And all I can say is I want to remind everybody about where people like, well, Tom Brady, where he went in the draft. And there's a number of other people throughout history who were not drafted very high that turned out to be excellent players.
Mhm.
And there's tons of people who were drafted high fell flat on their face. So um, I, I look at this crop and I say these are can't remember the term for this, and um, but they're solid workers. You
Mhm.
know, they're the type of people that you want to have on a team that you can build a team around, and I think will deliver for you.
I could see that. I mean, obviously, it's always about putting the talent around him. I mean, you put Kenny Pickett in Carolina for example, and he's got nothing there really. I mean, DJ Moore's a really good receiver. Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy, is one of the best backs in the league. But we've seen his trajectory the last 2 years. He gets hurt a lot. Can he avoid that injury bug? Put him on other teams. Like, I'm not saying he should go to the Vikings for example, but he's got ready-made weapons all over the place, like Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. There Irv Smith will be back next year to go. So it all depends on what you put around him. Yes, and obviously having a good offensive line that will keep him upright too.